It's 2 a.m. The house is dead quiet. You get up to use the bathroom, and on the walk back to bed, in a hallway you've walked through 10,000 times, in a house where nothing has ever hurt you, your heart rate climbs. You move a little faster. You definitely don't look at the space under the bed. Nothing is there. You know nothing is there, and your body does not care. So what is actually happening in that hallway? You're an adult. You know the statistics on how safe your street is. You check the locks yourself. None of that information reaches whatever part of you just sped up your walk. That part is worth understanding because it's older than your house, older than your species' ability to build houses at all. And once you see how it works, a completely ordinary trip to the bathroom starts to look like a fossil. Start with a strange finding from 1971. A psychologist named Martin Seligman noticed something odd about how humans learn to be afraid. Show someone a genuinely dangerous modern object, a running table saw, a live electrical socket, a 6-lane freeway, and it usually takes a real bad experience before their brain flags it as something to fear on sight. But show almost anyone a snake, a spider, a steep ledge, or total darkness, and the fear installs almost instantly, often with zero bad experience required. Seligman called this prepared learning. His argument was that evolution had preloaded certain fears, cocked and ready to fire the moment a trigger appeared, because those were the exact dangers that had been killing our ancestors for millions of years, long before table saws or freeways existed to kill anyone. It's a strange kind of math when you sit with it. Cars kill tens of thousands of people a year in the US alone. Snakes barely register in the same statistics. And yet, almost nobody's pulse spikes at a parked sedan, while plenty of grown adults still flinch at a coiled garden hose in bad light. Statistics didn't write that fear in. Ancient math did. Darkness earns its spot on that short list for a blunt reason. For nearly all of the time our species has existed, night was the single most dangerous stretch of every day. Human eyes are built for daylight. The predators sharing our ancestors' landscape evolved eyes packed with extra light-catching cells and a reflective layer behind the retina that hands them a real advantage after sunset, often letting them make out shapes in a fraction of the light a human eye would need for the same scene. We got none of it. Once the light dropped, an ancestor of yours was one of the worst-equipped animals around, sharing the dark with several that weren't. The individuals who felt nothing when the sun went down didn't get to pass that calm on as often as the ones who got nervous, found the fire, and stayed close. Run that filter for a few 100,000 generations, and you get a species that shows up already wired to be uneasy after dark, no lesson required. But here's a detail that complicates the story, and it's worth sitting with. If this fear is truly factory installed, why isn't it there on day one? Newborns show no fear of darkness. They spend their first 9 months floating in it. Researchers who study childhood fear consistently find it's essentially absent before age 2, then climbs fast and peaks around age 4, right as a child becomes capable of imagining what might be hiding in the dark instead of just reacting to what's visible. One study tracking Dutch children found more than 70% of 4 to 12-year-olds reported being afraid at night. Another, on teenagers in Hungary, found nearly 2 in 3 still reported some fear of the dark well into adolescence. So this isn't a switch flipped at birth. It's closer to a subroutine that boots up on schedule at the exact age a child's brain becomes able to imagine an unseen threat rather than only respond to a seen one. It also isn't perfectly uniform. Researchers who compare fear of the dark across different cultures find real variation in how strongly and how long it shows up, which tells you the wiring sets up the vulnerability, but upbringing and culture still decide how loudly the alarm rings. That timing is the real clue, and it points somewhere more specific than darkness is scary. Psychologist Justin Barrett and others have argued that humans carry an oversensitive habit of assuming an ambiguous shape or sound was caused by something with intentions, rather than something neutral whenever there isn't enough information to be sure. A coat on a hook, seen clearly, is obviously a coat, The same coat, in near total darkness, briefly registers as a shape that might be a person standing very still. How strong that specific wiring really is, and whether it's a dedicated instinct or just your brain doing its usual best guess work on worse data, is something researchers genuinely still argue about. What isn't seriously in dispute is the pattern itself. Strip away enough visual information, and human brains reliably fill the gap with the worst-case guess instead of the neutral one. Why would evolution build things this way, even at the cost of constant false alarms? Researchers studying what's called error management theory point to simple, cold math. When one kind of mistake is cheap and the other is fatal, natural selection doesn't build a system that's accurate on average. It builds one biased toward the cheap mistake. A smoke detector that goes off every time you make toast is annoying. A smoke detector that stays silent during an actual fire gets you killed. Fear of the dark is a smoke detector tuned by a few 100,000 years of exactly that arithmetic. A fear that fires too often costs you a little sleep. A fear that doesn't fire often enough costs you your life. So the version we inherited fires early, and it fires often, which is the entire answer to the hallway at 2 a.m. You're not malfunctioning. You're running an alarm system built by ancestors who needed it trigger happy inside an environment that has changed almost completely in the last few centuries and barely changed at all in the several 100,000 years before that. The system doesn't know your hallway is safe. It only knows it doesn't have enough light to be certain, and for nearly the entire history of your species, being uncertain in the dark was the difference between the individuals who left descendants and the individuals who didn't. The strange part is how recently and how easily we actually solved this. For almost the whole span of human existence, there was exactly one fix for the dark: fire, and staying close to it and to other people, since a lone human in the dark was worse odds than a group of them. Every other solution, walls with locks, streetlights, a phone flashlight, is only a few thousand years old at most, and the electric version has existed for barely more than a century, a rounding error against the few 100,000 years the fear itself had to set in. Your ancestors carried this fear through ice ages, migrations, and entire continents with no cure available except huddling nearer to other people and a flame that someone had to keep feeding all night. You carry the identical fear into a hallway with a light switch 3 feet away, one flick from making the entire problem disappear, and your nervous system still hasn't gotten the memo. So next time you catch yourself walking a little faster past a dark doorway, or leaving a hallway light on for no reason you could defend out loud, that isn't a flaw in you. It's a message sent by an ancestor who never got to meet you, who ran into something in the dark that you almost certainly never will, and who needed to make sure that fear made it all the way down to you anyway, across more generations than either of you could count. It worked. It's still working right now, tonight, whether you need it to or not, and it will likely still be working in your own descendants long after every light switch you've ever touched is gone.